over the years here, I've coined a few phrases and words which I privately think of as deityisms, excusagists, and Godsheimer's being among them. This month, in a later video, I'm going to call for people to stop referring to Christian apologists as merely apologists, but rather attach to them whatever wicked act they've been apologizing for. So, in the case of Low Bar Bill, Christian excusagist ordinaire William Lane Craig, we should all be referring to him from now on as genocide apologist William Lane Craig. Yeah, that feels right. In this video, I want to call upon my brethren and sisterin who roughly share my views about the tribal war god of Abraham and their followers to begin referring to those followers not just as believers, but as make-believers. For the last 6 weeks or so, I've been dealing with a pre-supper here in the comments, and despite the fact that he claims to have access to certain knowledge and truth, capital T, all I ever get from him are beliefs, make-beliefs. I've asked him to tell me just one thing we can actually know with some degree of certainty about his God, and he simply refuses to provide an example of his knowledge, instead directing me to one or more of his make-beliefs, as though making believe is an answer. That made me realize that when you're so deeply ensconced in the bubble of make-believe, you no longer even have access to the reality we all otherwise share. Make-believers don't live in our world with us. They inhabit an entirely different realm where their make-beliefs make everything and anything possible. They make believe they can have knowledge while their God allows a powerful supernatural agent to deceive the world.
And who could it have been? Let's see, I don't know. Let me think. Let me knock on Mr. Noggin. Who could trick us into doing that? Could have been Satan.
They make believe all manner of miracle is possible, that dead men can rise, that men can part seas, that women can give birth without ever having made the turtle with 2 backs. Make-believers can make believe that all of the wrongs of this world will be righted in some life to come. Folks like my old buddy Dennis Prager of PragerU infamy, go Devils, can't imagine how anyone like me could remain sane without such make-beliefs.
My belief in God and the afterlife keeps me sane.
Okay, but definitely not good. For Dennis, make-beliefs like the afterlife are the only way he can find to cope with the horrors and injustices his all-loving God allegedly created for us here. It's how he finds some level of happiness. Of course, atheists can do the same thing. In fact, we can be much happier than Christians because if we're prepared to make believe, we can hope and or choose to believe that we all end up in some kind of afterlife, which is not dependent on a God who is not only a genocidal monster, but capricious and cruel as fuck. We can imagine such a better world waiting for us in the next life where all good people are ultimately saved, not just those who believe the right thing. In our make-believe, all our suffering would be understandable, the result of natural processes, without some all-powerful being forcing us into a world filled with evil and suffering and then standing by and watching it all play out without ever lifting a finger to stop it. If we're just going to make believe, then we can certainly make believe something far superior to the Christian worldview. In my make-believe, there would be no hell, for instance. I recently had a conversation with a friend, an atheist, who believes we have souls and that our consciousness lives on beyond this life. He admits he has no evidence for this. It's just something he feels deeply. That's open to everyone, make-believer and non-believer alike. The bonus, though, for people like me is that we don't have to be connected to a genocidal monster, or fear that our loved ones will be tortured forever while we enjoy paradise, making our make-believe infinitely superior, if not more or less believable. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I have a confession. I'm an addict. But I don't think I need help, especially because this addiction actually helps me with my work. And no, it's not porn, drugs, alcohol, or sex. Although, hold on a second, let me think through that last one. All right, so it's definitely not porn, drugs, or alcohol. I'm speaking, of course, about Justin and the deconstruction zone, which is now an almost daily thing. Praise Hitch and Doug. I've talked about the deconstruction zone previously on 2 occasions. Last month, we looked at the ultra-depraved Father Joseph, who couldn't decide whether kids teasing someone deserved to be murdered. As if that wouldn't end humanity within a generation. If you're not familiar with the show, Justin just talks to make-believers on his live stream. They look at the Bible together, and then, almost inevitably, the make-believer will say something absolutely horrifying. Now, this is generally a channel for satire and humor, but I want to be taken seriously for the next few minutes, and I know exactly what I need to do here on social media to make that happen. First, I obviously need a background of books, many books. There we go. And of course, I need a very serious microphone and microphone arm. I'm actually using a very serious microphone right now, but I need something bigger, and it needs to be in the shot with me. Oh, there we go. I should probably have headphones too, but I know how much you guys love the hair, so I don't know. Maybe I'll put in an AirPod so it looks like there's someone I might be talking to at some point. Maybe not. Having said and done all that now, let me be dead serious for a few. What the fuck? What the fuck, you fucking motherfuckers? Why are we still having to deal with this shit and have these conversations? We are 25 years into the 21st century, and we are still having to live and breathe and talk with people who will defend the most monstrous shit imaginable. Shit we've already all decided is reprehensible and vile. All except these people. The Christians. Yes, I'm talking about Christians specifically, but also make-believers in the tribal war god of Abraham more broadly. Other than such make-believers, I dare you to find any person living in the Western world today who will defend genocide, slavery, rape marriage, misogyny, homophobia, and all manner of what any of us would easily see and declare as injustice. All manner of injustice. Head on over to the deconstruction zone and you will find a never-ending lineup of Christians willing to do exactly that. And I love the way Justin does things. He'll start off by asking these make-believers if they believe that God is just, for instance. Of course. Then he'll give a generic example of some injustice. Do you believe that it's right to punish a person for another person's crime or sin? No, of course not. That wouldn't be just, they'll say. Then Justin opens his Bible and turns to any number of stories therein showing God doing just that, punishing person A for the sins of person B. All of a sudden, that effortless, no, that wouldn't be just, turns into one of the most impressive displays of tap dancing you will ever see. And I've picked up on a pattern Christians use which demonstrates why Christianity is so morally bankrupt and depraved. They'll say, well, we're all sinners, so whatever judgment God gives is just. However unjust it is, even in their own minds when anyone else does it. This is exactly how and why Christians could justify doing all of the Christian things they did all over the world, destroying lives, entire people groups, cultures, languages, and stealing the lands and resources of indigenous peoples. When you believe that God's justice is different from our justice, there isn't any atrocity you can't justify. You're simply the instrument of God's judgment. Your humanity, your decency, your empathy be damned, literally. And that's exactly what we see in both Christians and their apologists today. On a recent live stream with Justin, a Christian was defending God's punishing 70,000 Israelites with death because David took a census of the people. How dare he, by the way? Justin was trying to get the guy to explain how punishing those 70,000 people for a sin committed by David was just. And within that conversation, our Christian friend revealed exactly how and why Christianity is so corrupting of the human heart and mind, to basic human decency.
As the angel of the Lord is killing all these people, David says, I alone have sinned. What have these people done? Let your hand be against me and my household only.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with your issue, right? I understand the issue. It's very it's very human, right? Like I empathize with it a lot.
But my God demands that I suppress my humanity and my empathy for my fellow human beings. Folks, this is not just the bullshit of some random Christian on Justin's live stream. These people have learned this vile shit listening to people like Michael Jones, William Lane Craig, Cameron Bertuzzi, Frank Turek, etc. Those folks are not just apologists, they're rape apologists, genocide apologists, misogyny apologists, homophobia apologists, and perhaps worst of all, child slavery apologists. It's all right there in their holy book. This is how we need to start referring to these folks, these apologists. Fuck all of these people. They need to be shamed. And if you're one of those people on my side who will not call them rape apologists, genocide apologists, etc., so that you can have them on your show and pull some serious views, then fuck you too, you sick fuck. You are complicit and should be equally ashamed. All right, well, thanks for sticking around for this. I may have been doing this too long, or maybe just long enough. Hitch bless you, Justin. Doug too. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. Let's have a Joseph Smith moment together. And no, this has nothing to do with nailing young girls. Let's imagine that it's the middle of the night and we wake up to find the room filled with light, brighter than the noonday sun. Then we realize that the light is coming from what appears to be an angel of light. We put on our sunglasses, we take an extra strength Excedrin, and we ask the angel why he's dressed in a toga. Then he just starts yapping. The message doesn't even matter in this hypothetical. He says his piece and then he just magically disappears. Now, in this hypothetical, this has all really happened. It's not a vision or some kind of hallucination. It's not bad pizza or shrooms. In terms of my rhetorical goals, this has all actually happened. We all just had a genuine encounter with what appears to be an angel of light, given the sense data available to us.
One of my habits now is ignoring all data.
Could we then know beyond a reasonable doubt or with any kind of certainty that this event really was an encounter with an angel of light? Star Trek: The Next Generation dealt with this question in an episode called The Devil's Due, where Captain Picard and crew had to expose a powerful alien posing as a demon with supernatural powers to scare a planet's population into submission. Hashtag Clark's Third Law. An alien posing as a demon is one thing, but Christians have an even bigger problem. Satan, a fallen angel who, according to Paul in 2 Corinthians 11:14, can masquerade as an angel of light in order to deceive us. Luke tells us that Satan entered Judas so that he'd betray Jesus. Imagine that. After 3 years of palling around with God incarnate, feeling his love, seeing his miracles, Satan's power was still too much for Judas. And clearly God allows this. A few months back, we had a Christian precept come into the comments here with a typical precept script. These folks presume that God's revelation, especially the Christian God, is the only way we can have the necessary preconditions for intelligibility and knowledge, whatever the hell that means. So I asked him how we can know anything when God allows a powerful supernatural being to deceive the world.
But there's also an external blindness. Satan is a deceiver who deceives the world.
After dodging the question over and over again, he finally gave me this. James 4:7. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. 1 Peter 5:8-9. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith. 1 John 5:18. We know that whosoever is born of God sinneth not, but he that is begotten of God keepeth himself, and that wicked one toucheth him not. Anyone see the problem here? Yeah, this is nothing more than for the Bible tells me so. And it doesn't address my question, which was about knowledge. Instead, he's told us only why he believes he can have knowledge when God allows a powerful supernatural force to deceive the world. The problem is that if Satan exists, he predates the Bible and could have easily inspired the Bible authors to deceive the world. Modern scholarship demonstrates this to be the case. There are numerous books in the Bible which are clear forgeries. From the 6 disputed letters of Paul to the epistles of Peter, James, John, and Jude, from which our commenter quotes. Within the Gospels, there are later insertions not found in our earliest copies, including the long ending of the Gospel of Mark and the story of the woman taken in adultery in John's Gospel. We also know the Bible to be unreliable because Jesus didn't return with his kingdom before all the disciples had died, like he said he would. Make-believers can't gather 2 or more together and get anything they ask for in Jesus' name. Make-believers can't do the greater works than Jesus, as Jesus claimed they'd be able to do. And there's no evidence of the Exodus, the conquest of Canaan, or a worldwide flood, etc. Of course, Satan would want us to believe that the owning of other human beings as property is a good thing. Of course, he would want us to think that things like genocide, misogyny, homophobia, rape, marriage, and all manner of injustice are good things. That's his job. He's here to deceive the entire world, and God clearly wants him to do it. God has cleared his path. Can you feel the love? Once you've opened the door to a magical realm with magical beings who have magical powers, you are hopelessly lost. The possibility of any kind of knowledge goes out the window. All things are possible, however silly, because nothing can be falsified. So all options are forever on the table. Magical thinking is nothing more than a surrender to ignorance and the impossibility of anything more. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. This video was starting to go viral when I began writing for this month's videos. Maybe you've seen it.
What would Jesus do about a tax system that benefits the rich over the poor? What would Jesus do about a healthcare system that forces the sick to start GoFundMe pages to afford life-saving surgeries? What would Jesus do about an education system that ties a child's school funding to their community's property wealth? What would Jesus do about a justice system that incarcerates more people than any other country on the face of the earth?
The most Christian country in the industrial West, by the way, where 0.07 of the federal prison population are atheists. Thanks, Hemet.
And what would Jesus do about an economic system that prioritizes profits over the health of our planet? Would he stay in his room and pray? Or would he walk into the seat of power and flip over the tables of injustice?
Oh, he would definitely stay in his room, although I don't imagine Jesus needs to pray, right? I mean, he's the guy that people pray to. But we know he'd stay in his room because that's exactly what he's been doing for the last 2,000 years. My dude, do you have a case of Godsheimer's? Godsheimer's. According to you and every other Christian, Jesus is alive and well. He can flip over the tables any damn time he feels like it. But he never does. Think about that. Jesus has allegedly been around through some seriously ugly shit. You don't even have to go back 2,000 years. We can limit this to the 20th century, where we had numerous genocides taking place all over the world, many carried out by those worshiping Jesus. And what did Jesus do? He stayed in his room, watching while the Jews were put into the gas chambers and the peoples of Ukraine and China were systematically starved to death. Prior to that, Jesus stayed in his room watching while Christians, doctrine of discovery in hand, sailed all over the world, raping, pillaging, plundering, and enslaving the indigenous peoples of the Americas, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, India, the Pacific Islands, etc., stealing their lands and natural resources, cannibalizing native culture, all while Jesus stayed in his room. And given the fact that he probably had access to GTA 6, who could blame him? Most people now, aside from the Christians, have finally come to terms with the fact that the tribal war god of Abraham, as depicted in the Hebrew Bible, is a moral monster. They look at the laws God gave Moses, and they are appropriately horrified, from allowing slavery, including child slavery, to rape marriage, genocide, homophobia, etc. It's easy for people to see those holy laws given by Yahweh as vile. But somehow Jesus gets a pass? Christians love their nonsensical Trinity when Jesus is center stage. But the second Dad grabs the spotlight, that's when the anxiety sets in. This suggests that, along with the rest of us, even Christians don't understand the Trinity. It's not like Jesus was away comforting the babies in purgatory while Dad was allowing child slavery and ordering the Israelites to kill babies. God and Jesus are one in every way imaginable. Except for Jesus having a penis for at least a little while. Why did Jesus overturn the tables at the temple? Well, he was upset at the commercialization of that sacred space, his house of prayer. Yeah, terrible, right? Meanwhile, all around him there were slaves, people who were owned as property, being denied their freedom, possibly being treated terribly because Jesus and his dad said that was okay. And it never occurred to Jesus to say otherwise, knowing exactly what would happen to Africans at the hands of Christians some 1,500 years down the road. Jesus also knew that the anti-Semitism of his new addition to the Holy Book would lead to endless deportations, pogroms, and ultimately the Holocaust. Did he speak up? No. Jesus lived at a time of horrific misogyny, beyond what we can imagine today. Did he speak up? No. Jesus did make some corrections. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, but I say turn the other cheek. Of course, he was the one who said an eye for an eye 1,000 years prior, and without the clarification about the cheek. During the Sermon on the Mount, did you hear anything like this? Thou hast heard it said that if thou seest a virgin survivor of thine genocide, thou canst bringeth her home, giveth her time to get over thy murdering her family, then marry her. But I say unto you, thou shalt do no such thing, for women are every bit the equal of man, deserving of every other right and consideration given to any other person. Being divine doesn't mean that you always get a pass. It means that you're even more responsible for all the shit that goes down. Aside from the monstrous stuff Jesus never condemned, he added to it by promising to use violence for all eternity on sentient beings who don't believe that he was the good guy. The good guy who approved of slavery, misogyny, genocide, rape marriage, and now, on top of all that, endless torture. Let's all stop denying the obvious. Jesus was a moral monster. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. Was Mr. Deity part of the new atheist movement? Honest to hitch, when I started making Mr. Deity content, I had no idea there was a movement afoot. I'm still not sure I know what the new atheism is or whether there was an old atheist movement prior. Aside from someone like Madalyn Murray O'Hair, to whom all American secularists owe a tremendous debt for getting prayer and Bible reading out of our public schools. In 1964, Life magazine called Madalyn the most hated woman in America. 40 years later, the new atheist movement began in earnest with the publication of Sam Harris's The End of Faith, and David Mill's lesser-known The Atheist Universe. I asked different AI chatbots what the most popular atheist books were prior to 2004. The answer was The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine and Bertrand Russell's Why I Am Not a Christian. Yeah, prior to the rise of the Four Horsemen, Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, and Hitchens, people were not buying books about atheism or anti-theism. If you're under 40, you may not realize how scandalous and taboo atheism was, and for 1,500 years prior in the Latin West. Publicly speaking out against Christianity could and did get people killed. Sometimes people were killed for simply not embracing a particular brand of Christianity. That's how nuts it was. That all changed when the entire world woke up to the suddenly obvious threat religion posed on September 11th, 2001, and the subsequent killing of hundreds of thousands in Iraq and Afghanistan by an American government led by a born-again Christian who believed, according to reports, that he had the backing of God Almighty. We were looking at a full-blown global holy war when the new atheist movement began. This opened a door not opened in the last 1,500 years. Non-believers stepped out of the shadows and started speaking out, without fear, without restraint. The Christian religion in particular, which had been shielded from criticism for as long as anyone could remember, was finally put in the spotlight, where everyone was forced to look at the grotesque images of a violent, unjust, unloving God and his followers. Today, people are saying that the new atheist movement is dead, or at least lacking influence. Critiques suddenly abound. And yet atheist social media is clearly alive and well, with those taking up the mantle owing an immense debt to the new atheist movement and its figureheads, which honestly might be the most empirically successful social movement since the Macarena. Seriously, folk, if you look at belief and doubt in America over the last 20 years, you can see the impact of the new atheism. And it is impressive. Pew reports that over the last 2 decades, Americans embracing atheism, agnosticism, or claiming no religious affiliation nearly doubled from 15% to 29%, while the percentage of Americans affiliated with Christianity has dropped from 78% in 2007 to 62% in 2023. A 20% drop. I don't know if that percentage is accurate. I don't math. And there's no evidence of this trend ending anytime soon. In the most recent Pew survey, we learned that for every person in America who became a Christian, 6 people left. This is true for Protestants and especially Catholics, who are leaving at a ratio of 8-to-1. This trend is global as well, with Christians all over the world leaving the religions they were raised in. Thank Hitch. So whatever you want to say, the new atheism can hardly be seen as a failure. Rather than dying, the new atheist movement has evolved into the deconstruction movement, a kinder, slightly gentler version concerned less with the threat of religion and more focused on a desire to help people find their way out of religion with as little trauma as possible. The movement includes people like Mindshift Brandon, Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic, Christy Burke, and even Alex O'Connor, who's softened quite a bit over the years. That doesn't mean that these folks can't go full-on new atheist hitch-slap Dawkins damage beast mode. Take a look at Alex O'Connor's debate with Dinesh D'Souza, where Alex ripped Dinesh limb from limb. It's absolutely brutal. Likewise, Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic recently published this video, which has a definite old-school new atheist vibe. With Christians in power again, I guess that kinder, slightly gentler take on things no longer seems appropriate or effective. The new atheism was simply about exposing the horrors of religion, hidden and privileged for centuries. It was about the freedom to finally speak out and say without fear, "The emperor is buck naked and completely grotesque." Keeping quiet was simply no longer feasible, especially not when technology had finally provided folks like me a platform. So long as people are worshiping a moral monster, thinking that being the essence of moral perfection, atheists, both new and old, will be there, exposing the depravity of those worshiping the tribal war god of Abraham. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. If you followed resurrection apologetics in the last half-decade or so, you know that my dearest friend Paul from the YouTube channel Apologia has been absolutely crushing it with his naturalistic minimal witnesses explanation for the resurrection of Jesus and the founding of the Christian Church. His idea, based on the available evidence, is that there were really only two people who personally claimed to have seen the resurrected Jesus via visions, and that things spread from there. I didn't really do justice to Paul's idea. There's a lot more to it, so I'll link to his video in the description. But after looking into these claims myself, I've come up with what I think is another plausible naturalistic piece of the puzzle. And my idea includes or grants the reality of both the empty tomb, which is not a part of the minimal facts apologetic many Christians embrace, and concedes that Joseph of Arimathea was a real person, who really did take the body of Jesus and place it in his garden tomb. In fact, including those two pieces of the puzzle makes my idea the simplest possible explanation for why those first people at the tomb that Sunday morning began to think that Jesus had risen from the dead. So let's start with the claims. All four Gospels report that Jesus was crucified at a place called Golgotha, or Calvary, the place of the skull. 3 of the 4 Gospels agree that there was darkness over the land for 3 hours prior to the death of Jesus. All 4 Gospels then agree that Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin, went to Pilate, who then allowed Joseph to take the body of Jesus and place it in his garden tomb. Matthew and Mark tell us that Joseph started this process as the evening approached. Luke tells us that the women from Galilee followed Joseph and saw Jesus' body laid in the tomb. Mark agrees and names those women as Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph. Matthew basically agrees with Mark with some spectacular additions. Matthew and Mark also agree about the stone being rolled in front of the tomb. Luke and John don't mention that stone when talking about the burial, but all of the Gospels mention the stone being rolled or taken away when the various people came to the tomb early Sunday morning. John tells us it was still dark when Mary Magdalene went to the tomb that morning, finding the stone already rolled away. Mark and Luke agree Matthew has an angel miraculously rolling the stone away, because of course he does. So now let's consider my explanation of the empty tomb. First, as mentioned previously for this discussion, I grant that there really was an empty tomb. I also grant that there was at least one woman who came to the tomb that Sunday morning who found the stone rolled away and the body of Jesus missing. John tells us that the tomb was, rather conveniently, quote, at the place where Jesus was crucified, end quote, and that the tomb was in a garden. Let's remember that Joseph began the process of acquiring the body of Jesus, quote, as evening approached, Matthew 27:57. Obviously, going to Pilate, getting his ear and his approval would have taken some time. Then Joseph would have had to return to Golgotha, get the body of Jesus down off the cross, and carry it to the tomb, perhaps with the help of the women who followed. By this time, I think it's safe to assume that it was either dark or getting quite dark. And that's ancient world dark, not dark like the 21st century urban areas we have here now. We're talking dark. I think it's also safe to assume that this place, Golgotha, the place of the skull, was not a place the women were familiar with. I mean, it's not like the mall where you go and hang with your friends, maybe get some of those delightful sugar Cinnabits at Wetzel's Pretzels. It's the place of the skull. And Jesus probably avoided that place like the plague, knowing what was going to happen eventually. Then we have what I consider to be a genuine oddity. When the women arrive at the tomb that morning, the stone is rolled away. Why is that odd? Because as we learn from the Gospels, post-resurrection Jesus can appear suddenly in rooms where the door is locked. He's no longer subject to gravity either. So it's not like he was going to be stuck in the tomb if no one came and rolled the stone away. He didn't need that done. At that point, he was a magical being, a god with magical powers. So we have the women returning that morning, some 36 hours later, to an unfamiliar place in the dark, according to John, which they had only been to once before. And that was also either while it was dark or getting quite dark. 36 hours prior, there was a stone rolled in front of the tomb, and now they've returned to find a stone rolled away. And in my view, unnecessarily, since resurrected Jesus clearly didn't need the stone to be rolled away. What explains all this? Well, there's a very simple naturalistic explanation which accounts for all of this data. When the women went back that morning, 36 hours later, having only been to the tomb once, and that was in the dark, they simply went to the wrong tomb. That's why the stone was rolled away. Uncle Shlomo was going to be laid to rest in that tomb later that morning. Somewhere along that garden path, the women, however many there were, they simply made a wrong turn. Have you ever tried to find your way back to an unfamiliar place you've only been to once before? And in the dark? We at least have street signs now. It would have been so easy to mess that up circa CE 33. Then the women and the apostles started remembering things Jesus had said about his death and resurrection, and in their sudden euphoria, imagined Jesus had risen from the dead. One of them may even have had some kind of guilt or grief hallucination to get the ball rolling. It really could be that simple. This explanation for the empty tomb and how people started thinking of Jesus as risen from the dead is not only plausible, but it's certainly far more plausible than a man rising from the dead, contrary to the laws of physics and biology, contrary to everything we know about how dead people behave. With so much of the Gospels being clearly mythic, there are always going to be bits and pieces you can use to push back against this idea. But presuming a naturalistic world, this works. It really could have been that simple. A wrong turn at Albuquerque, as Bugs would say. We all know stranger things have happened. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. Are people like me, atheists, stealing from God? Take a look at this clip from prominent rape and genocide apologist Frank Turek and his YouTube buddy pushing this nonsense.
You have no grounds by which to say rape is wrong. Correct?
Are you serious? Forceful sexual assault? Yeah, that's wrong. Everyone here will agree with that, and
Cody,
I have no grounds.
Cody, how is it wrong if there's no God? Is it just your opinion?
No, it's everyone in this room's opinion.
So majority vote.
Raise your hand in this room if you want to get raped.
Let's take a look again at Frank's first statement in the video.
You have no grounds by which to say rape is wrong.
Frank clearly has a case of Godsheimer's.
Godsheimer's.
He's completely forgotten that he has no grounds by which to say that rape is wrong, because his God is totally okay with rape, or what I call rape marriage, which is actually even more disgusting than just rape, because the woman not only gets raped, but she has to marry her rapist and continue to get raped by her rapist for as long as she lives. Let's open our Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 and 29. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. Lovely, right? Even worse, if you're genociding a group of people and you find an attractive young virgin girl amongst the genocided, well, let's just read it right from the Christian holy book. So holy. Turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 10 through 14. When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house, and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go into her, and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. Isn't it sweet how God allows the young virgin girl to be humiliated, i.e. rape married, but not sold into slavery? Praise God, praise Jesus. But if God so happily allows women to be rape married, then on what grounds can Frank say that rape marriage is wrong, or just rape in general? Is Frank suppressing the truth in unrighteousness? Maybe he just wants to sin. I don't know. But I do know that he can't be opposed to rape marriage, when God so clearly allows it. The same goes for the Nazi genocide. Let's listen to Frank again, however horrifying.
Majority vote does not determine right.
No one. Zero
Otherwise,
people.
you have to say the Nazis were right in murdering Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, and Jehovah's Witnesses, because they voted that way.
Systematic extermination of people based on their beliefs is incorrect as well, Doc, and you know that.
I know it, you know it too, you just have no way of justifying it.
Other than massacre and senseless extermination?
Again, Cody, you're stealing from God to argue against it.
How is this kid stealing from God, Frank's God? The one who's totally okay not with just rape, but with genocide as well. Let's turn again to our holy book, so holy. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 15 to 16. Of the cities of these people which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them. So how can Frank say that the mass murder of entire people groups is wrong when his God is totally okay with it? No, that's an understatement. How can Frank say it's wrong when his God commanded it? Well, Frank is stealing from Enlightenment and humanist morality. He has completely abandoned his God-based morality and stolen reason, compassion, empathy, and the modern philosophies of morality from those of us who don't believe in his God. For the record, atheists like me find almost nothing of interest in Christian morality and the grounding thereof, their monstrous God and his only begotten Son, Jesus. Indeed, unlike Christians, I have absolutely no grounds to embrace or tolerate slavery, including child slavery, genocide, including the murder of babies and animals, rape marriage, misogyny, homophobia, religious intolerance and bigotry, or for murdering witches, adulterers, non-believers, Sabbath breakers, non-virgin girls, etc. The morals we embrace today in the West have nothing to do with the monstrous tribal war god of Abraham. Thank Hitch. When the West followed the Christian holy book, we had genocide, slavery, misogyny, homophobia, religious intolerance, all of it. So let's thank Hitch that Christians are now stealing our values, because Christian values are shit, which is why they still have rape and genocide apologists like Frank Turek. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.